So for the first part of our program, let me call on Director Jan Aris Makaspak of the Local Government and Regional Coordination Bureau of the Department of Budget and Management to provide us with a brief overview of the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas and Garcia petitions and the silent features of the Executive Order number 138 series of 2021. Director Aris is one of the key DBM officials who have been actively involved in furthering the discussion on full devolution with local government units. So Director Aris, may we now calling you to present the Supreme Court ruling and EO 138 as an overview. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much po for that introduction. May I request the Secretariat to allow my colleague to share her screen for my presentation. Thank you very much. To the officials and personnel of our partner oversight agencies, the DILG, the DOF, NEDA, and other national government agencies, and to my colleagues from the Department of Budget and Management, to the participants from the local government units, my fellow public servants, good morning to all of you. Today, I will be presenting the implementation of the Supreme Court decision on the Mandanas Garcia case and the salient features of Executive Order number 138. Right. So just to give you a brief background on the legal basis of the National Tax Allotment, previously known as the ERA, under the 1987 Constitution, specifically Section 6, Article 10 thereof, the local government units shall have a just share as determined by law in the national taxes, which shall be automatically released to them. So that just share of the local government units mandated under the 1987 Constitution was determined by Congress by virtue of Section 284 of the Local Government Code of 1991. So it is provided in that provision of the Local Government Code that the local government units shall have a 40% share in the national internal revenue taxes based on the collection of the third fiscal year preceding the current fiscal year. But Congressman Hermelando Mandanas, who is now the provincial governor of the province of Batangas, and the late Governor Enrique Garcia of the province of Bataan, filed separate petitions assailing the constitutionality of Section 284 of the Local Government Code of 1991. In 2018, the Supreme Court rendered its ruling on those petitions, which was rendered final and executory in 2019. Essentially, the Supreme Court directed the national government to change the basis of the computation of the just share of LGUs to cover all national taxes, including the collections of customs duties by the Bureau of Customs. On this slide, presented graphically is the expansion of the base of the computation of the ERA shares of LGUs before and after the Mandanas ruling. The left pie chart shows the basis in the computation of the ERA before the Supreme Court ruling. The bigger pie is the national taxes, and a subset of it is the national internal revenue taxes. So 40% of the national internal revenue taxes goes to the LGUs as their ERA, and the 60% remaining is left to the national government. But after the Mandanas ruling is implemented, as shown on the right pie chart, we can see that the basis of the computation of the ERA is expanded already from national internal revenue taxes only to all national taxes, which effectively means expansion of resources transferred to the national government. So the fiscal impact of the Mandanas ruling is that whatever increase the local government units will receive from the revised computation of the NTA will result to a tantamount decrease in the fiscal resources available to the national government. Next slide, please. So in order to mitigate or cushion the fiscal impact of the Mandanas ruling, the measure that was implemented by the national government upon consultation with the local government units is the full devolution of functions and services to the local government units on a phased basis. So this measure is intended to ensure fiscal sustainability, and we also see it as a measure to strengthen the fiscal autonomy of the LGUs and to put an end to the long-withstanding problem of duplication of functions and financing between the national government and the local government units. So in order to smoothly implement this full devolution measure, The technical working group initiated by the Department of Budget and Management, together with the Department of the Interior and Local Government, the Department of Finance, the National Economic and Development Authority, in consultation with our other partners like the Civil Service Commission, the Development Academy of the Philippines, the Office of the President, and with the leagues of local government units, uh, a draft executive order was prepared and eventually submitted to the Office of the President. So that draft executive order has already been approved by the President and was numbered Executive Order number 138 issued on June 1, 2021. In the next slides, I'll be presenting the salient features of Executive Order number 138. So the first salient feature is the delineation of roles and responsibilities between the national government and the local government units. The second salient feature that we have provided on this slide is the preparation of devolution transition plans, both by the national government agencies and the local government units. Then the creation of a committee on devolution and the establishment of a growth equity fund. Then we also have the capacity building for local government units, the specific roles of the LGUs as delineated under the executive order, the concomitant requirement to strengthen the planning, investment programming, and budgeting linkage, and the institutionalization of a monitoring and evaluation system. And finally, the options for the personnel affected by the devolution. So these are the eight personnel of the national government agencies. So let's discuss the specific provisions of the executive order. The executive order provides the full devolution of functions, services, and facilities from the national government to the local government units based on Section 17 of the Local Government Code and other subsequent laws. It is to be reiterated and emphasized that the EO only provides the full devolution of functions and services which have already been devolved to the local government units under the Local Government Code and other pertinent laws. And as already clarified by Yusek Kim De Leon during his opening message, there will be no new or additional functions that are being devolved to the local government units, but we are sticking the provisions of the Local Government Code of 1991 and other subsequent laws that assigned the LGUs the responsibility of providing certain functions and services. Now, with regard to the covered LGUs, all LGUs, including the barangays, will be covered, and all departments, agencies, and instrumentalities of the executive branch with devolved functions are also covered by the executive order. Now, on the part of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao and the LGUs within the jurisdiction of the BARM, they shall be guided by the organic law for the Bangsamoro or RA number 11054 and other relevant laws that may be passed or enacted by the Bangsamoro Parliament. So that was cleared, that was clarified po in the implementing rules and regulations. Next slide. Next is the preparation of devolution transition plans by the national government agencies and the local government units to smoothly or to ensure the smooth implementation of the devolution transition. The national government agencies are directed to prepare and implement a devolution transition plan. The devolution transition plan shall be submitted by the national government agencies concerned to the Department of Budget and Management for evaluation and approval within 120 days after the effectivity of the executive order. The guidelines on the preparation and submission of the devolution transition plan of the national government agencies will be prescribed in a joint memorandum circular that will be soon issued by the DBM and the DILG. Essentially, these are the components of the devolution transition plan that will be prepared by the national government agencies. Number one is the identification of functions and services which have been devolved or to be devolved and the corresponding level of LGU to which they shall be devolved based on the expenditure assignment of each level of LGU under the Local Government Code of 1991 and other relevant laws. Also included in this item number one is the phasing or strategy for devolution to the LGUs, taking into consideration the growth strategies, the resources and capacity based on the experiences and assessment of the national government agencies when they were still implementing the functions that will be transferred to the LGUs. The second component is the definition of standards for the delivery of the devolved services, which should include also the minimum cost, the scope, and the quality of services that should be complied with by the local government units in the implementation or absorption of the functions that will be transferred to them. Third is the strategy for capacity development for the local government units to enable them to absorb and manage the devolved functions and services, and for the national government agencies to assume their steering functions. The fourth component is the framework for monitoring and performance assessment of the LGUs, which may include the grant of incentives and imposition of sanctions as authorized under existing laws. And the last component is the organizational effectiveness proposal, containing the modifications in the organizational structure and staffing complement of the departments and agencies to strengthen their capacity in assuming the steering functions. Now, on the part of the local government units, as I have mentioned, and consistent with EO number 138 and its IRR, the LGUs shall also prepare their respective devolution transition plan. And the guidelines for the preparation and submission of the LGU devolution transition plan will also be prescribed in a separate joint memorandum circular that will be issued by the DBM and the DILG. Essentially, the devolution transition plan of the local government units will serve as a guide on the monitoring and performance assessment of the LGUs by the national government agencies concerned, including the DBM and the DILG. Next slide. Next is the creation of a committee on devolution, or COMDEV, which is composed of the secretaries of the DBM and the DILG as co-chairpersons, and the members are the executive secretary, the secretaries of NEDA and DOF, and the presidents of the leagues of provinces, cities, and municipalities, and the Liga ng mga Barangay, as well as the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines. So both the national government agencies and the local government units are well represented in this COMDEV created under the EO. The DBM provides the secretariat services to the COMDEV, and we have already convened the COMDEV once to finalize the still then draft implementing rules and regulations. Next week, we have already scheduled the next meeting of the COMDEV to finalize the guidelines on the preparation and submission of the devolution transition plans of the national government agencies and local government units. Essentially, the main function of the COMDEV is to resolve the issues and concerns that may be raised by the national government agencies or the local government units in the implementation of the devolution efforts. So this is a very good venue to thresh out possible issues and concerns or difficulties or challenges that may arise during the implementation of the devolution. Next slide. Okay, so another significant component or important component of the executive order is the establishment of a growth equity fund, which, by the way, is a product of our consultation meetings with the local government units when we were still presenting the then draft executive order. So this growth equity fund is intended to address the problem of marginalization, unequal development, high poverty incidence, and disparities in the net fiscal capacities of the local government units. This growth equity fund shall cover the funding requirements of programs, projects, and activities of poor, disadvantaged, and lagging LGUs to gradually enable them to fully and efficiently implement the bold functions and services pursuant to the local government code and other pertinent laws. The specific guidelines on the and mechanisms on the release and utilization of the growth equity fund will be prescribed by the Development Budget Coordination Committee to ensure the equitable, performance-based, and time-bound allocation and distribution of the fund to the beneficiary local government units. The initial amount of the growth equity fund will be proposed by the DBM in the 2022 National Expenditure Program, which will be submitted by the President to Congress. Next slide. In view of the devolution of certain functions from the national government agencies, a capacity development agenda for the LGUs will be formulated. based on the assessment framework and guidelines to be issued by the local government academy, and they shall also be guided by the strategy for capacity development as may be reflected or contained in the devolution transition plan of the national government agencies concerned. And of course, it should also be in line with the local development trusts and performance goals and objectives of the local government units. These are the agencies that are primarily mandated to develop the capacity development framework. For the local government academy, they shall institute mechanisms to harmonize all capacity development interventions to ensure the efficient utilization of the resources of the national of the government as a whole for the purposes of capacity building. Now, on the part of the DAP, they shall continue to strengthen the capacities of local chief executives and local leaders and managers. And on the part of the Bureau of Local Government Finance, they shall conduct capacity development programs regarding revenue generation and fiscal management. And on the part of the other oversight agencies, well, for the Department of Budget and Management, we will continue to provide technical assistance in the area of budgeting and expenditure management, as well as procurement. Next slide. So these are the specific roles and responsibilities of the local government units as delineated under the executive order. The first one is the preparation of LGU devolution transition plan, which I think will be part of the discussions later on, and the preparation of a capacity development agenda, and finally the development of communications plan and strategy, which should be formulated based on the communications plan and strategy that will be prepared by the committee on devolution. Next. So as part of the strengthening of the vertical and horizontal linkages across the different levels of government in development planning, investment programming, and budgeting, as well as the reinforcement of a results-based monitoring and evaluation system in the national government agencies, the executive order also highlights the importance of planning at the regional level and the role of the regional development councils in setting the strategic direction for the faster development of the regions, especially those in the lagging areas, and facilitate the alignment of the local development plans and land use plans of the LGUs with the goals, objectives, and targets as prescribed in the updated Philippine Development Plan and the respective regional development plans of every region. Next. So to the extent authorized by civil service laws, rules, and regulations, the personnel hired on a permanent basis who may be affected by the devolution will have these options. Number one is for the affected personnel to transfer to the other units or offices within the department, agency, or GOCC to which they belong. The second option is they can apply for transfer to the other agencies in the executive branch. And third is for them to avail of the retirement benefits and separation incentives provided under the executive order. Subject to the discretion of the local government units, this personnel may apply to vacant positions in the LGUs. And if they get hired by the local government units, their employment will be considered as a new entry to the civil service, and they will be subject to the compensation system and salary schedules being implemented by the local government units that may absorb them. As clarified by Yusek Kim during his opening message, there will be no forced transfer of national government agency personnel to the local government units. It should be a mutual agreement between the personnel and the local government units. Kailangan gusto ng personnel na lumipat din sa LGU at willing din yung LGU na nai-absorb po sila subject to civil service laws and other budgeting limitations that we employ at the local level. It should also be emphasized that there will be no involuntary separation, termination, or layoff of personnel of the national government agencies affected by the devolution. Now, what will happen to the personnel hired on a contract of service or job order basis? Well, for the contractual personnel in the departments or agencies who were hired for the implementation of the devolved functions, we are now setting up a mechanism to identify those who are willing to be absorbed by the local government units. And we are also studying the possibility of providing the LGUs with this list of contractual personnel from the national government agencies, so the LGUs can benefit from the experience and technical expertise of this national government agency personnel. The DBM will be coordinating with the Civil Service Commission and the Department of the Interior and the Local Government for the development and issuance of the guidelines to ensure the fair, orderly, and transparent implementation of these options of the affected national government agency personnel. Next. So these are the next steps and ways forward in the implementation of the Executive Order number 138. As mentioned by Yusek Kim, the implementing rules and regulations has already been signed by all the member agencies of the Committee on Devolution, and I think it was already published. It's already in effect. Then a series of inception workshops with selected national government agencies, together with the representatives of the different leagues of LGUs and the member departments of the interagency technical working group will be conducted to ensure the strong alignment, synergy, and co-ownership of the goals of the full devolution transition effort among the national government agencies concerned and the local government units. We are also targeting the submission of the transition plans by the national government agencies to the DBM and the preparation of the LGU devolution transition plans within 2021. As I have mentioned already, there is a timeline for the preparation and submission of the devolution transition plans of the national government agencies. Next is the interagency technical working group is also geared to develop the framework for performance assessment of the devolved functions and to strengthen the capacities of the national government agencies on the monitoring and coaching function for the local government units. The capacity building activities for the LGUs will also be done through the Local Government Academy, the Development Academy of the Philippines, BLGF, and other national government agencies concerned. So this will be a continuing effort of our department together with our partner oversight agencies to capacitate the LGUs, especially next year, that we are expecting turnover of administration. So there may be new personnel next year after the elections. So we will continue to provide capacity building programs for the local LGU personnel. I think this is the last portion of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening.